Boker Tov, today's Daf, Shavua Tov. Today's Daf is Daf Ayin, number 70. As we begin the last week second to the last week, next week we'll finish קידושין. So, we learn again for Chanukah Kol Beis Yisrael and Sunnah Matzara B'Shivya. Everybody should be well, should be returned safely. So, from the very top of the page, the Mishnah had said that there were 10 different genealogical classes, different lineages that Ezra brought up from Babel when he returned. As we said on the day before, on yesterday's daf, actually we had that before he left Babel, he was concerned that they were going to get mixed up there and they wouldn't be purified. So he separated all the lower classes, the Mamzerim, the Halalim, all set them up and brought them with him to Eretz Yisrael to keep an eye on them, so to speak, so that Babel was kept to be pure lineage. These were pure breds, let's call them, not any mixtures, not any problematic people. So said they brought up these 10 different classes. Where do we know? How do we know these 10 different classes came up from Babel? How do we know there were such people there? So the Gemara says, Geri v'charuri. Yesterday the Gemara discussed the Halalim. How do we know that there were Halalim there? Those were Kohanim who married the wrong woman and their children therefore were Halalim. What about Gerim and Choram? Gerim we can understand, but what about Charuri, freed men as slaves? You know, Amar Chista Davar Kapaskas, all that were separated. In other words, the Gerim and the freed, these were people who had been mixed up. So as everybody that is separated from the Goyim, these were people Goyim who had converted. Fine, but we got to know that they are Gerim because we said Gerim can mix with Mamzerim, can marry Mamzerim. Mamzerim can marry a Ger, according to the predominant opinion that Kal Gerim Kal, and freed men. So we know that these were slaves. Also, that they didn't have the same lineage as regular Jews. So this is called Nivim Tumas Goyim. Maybe it was mixed up from the impurity of the Goyim. In other words, if you're talking about Goyim, they were originally Goyim. Talking about Abadim. Abadim were also originally Goyim. So we want to know who they were. Mamzerim. How do we know that they were Mamzerim then? Minolim. And how do we know that Ezra brought up Mamzerim from Babel? No, the Sivan says, Vayishma Sanbat HaCharoni. Pasuk says in Nehemiah that Sanbat HaCharoni heard the Tuvia Evet HaAmoni. And Tuvia, the Ammoni Eved. So here's Tuvia is clearly called an Eved. Sifki Rabban Yehuda, many people in Yehuda, this is already in Eretz Yisrael, Bali Shvulo had sworn allegiance to this Tuvia HaEved. Ki Chasanu l'Shchanya ben Aruch. He was the son-in-law of Shchanya ben Aruch. Shchanya was a Jew. And his son-in-law was this Tuvia, was a slave. Yochanan Beno, and Yochanan, the son of this Tuvia Eved, Lokachas Bas Meshulam ben Brachia, he took this woman, Jewish woman, Meshulam ben Brachia, as a wife. And obviously, Tuvia also was a son-in-law of Shchenya, so he was also married to a Jew, to a Jewess. So you see over here that they were Mamzerim. Because, why? Because they were Avadim and they married Jews. Why? Because that's a very strong opinion of many people in the Gemara and Yevamos. We hear that Zion, that a goy or a Eved who sleeps with a Jewish woman, the child is a mamzer. We don't hold that way, Lamaisa. We hold that the child is just a pure Jew, but she's a Jew. The child is a Jew, just that he doesn't have a great lineage, but a great yichus. But he held that he's a mamzer. So if Tuvia was the son-in-law, was an Eved, and he was the son-in-law of Shchenya, means he was married to a Jew. And his son was married to the Bas Meshulam ben Brach, was also married to a Jew. So you see over here that their kids were Mamzerim. That's how you know that there were Mamzerim that Ezra brought up from Babel to Eretz Yisrael. So Mamzer. That's if you hold that way, that an Eved who sleeps with a Jewish woman, the child is a Mamzer. And if you hold that, again, if an Eved or a Goy cohabits with a Jewish woman, the child is kosher, just not miyuchas, Michael Neimer. So what? So what if they? How do you know that there were Mamzerim? Fine, there were Avadim there, but the Avadim maybe were kept separate. And they were freed eventually. I know that kids are Mamzer. So we might have a Labanic. How do you know they had children from those wives? Obviously, Tuvia had a son. He said Yochanan Beno, but maybe it wasn't from that wife. Maybe it was from somebody else. Maybe it wasn't from a Jewish woman. Assuming my Davli Bahani, we know that he had children. Dilma Lahavlo, maybe he didn't have any children from the Dilma Lahavlo, maybe he didn't have any children from these wives. The Su, and it's from the Jewish woman. Assuming my Dehocha Avlu, the Saliku. How do you know that they were here in Babel and they went up to Eretz Yisrael? And it's Ezra. I'm trying to say the Mishnah said Ezra brought up all these different classes of people. How do you know that they were here in Babel? When it says Rabbi Yehuda, many people in Yehuda had sworn allegiance. Dilma Hasamav, maybe they were always in Eretz Yisrael. We're trying to show, how do you know that Ezra brought up Mamzerim? In other words, he declared these people Mamzerim, and he brought them up as a separate class to Eretz Yisrael to keep them separate. How do you know that? In this pasuk. These people, again, in the pasuk in Ezra and Nehemiah, these people came up to Eretz Yisrael, Tel Melach, from the mound of salt, that was the name, or Tel Charsha, the mound of plowing. Kruv Adon Ve'imar. That's what the pasuk says. These people came up from there. Below Yachlu Lahagadas Beisabos. Some this pasuk goes on. They weren't able to tell who their father's house was, Bezaram, or their mother's house. Im Yisrael, they couldn't even tell. They didn't even know who they were from. Tel Melach. What does it mean by they came up from Tel Melach? El Bnei Adam Shedam Masim Lamaisa Stone Sheneflo Melach. Why is it called Tel Melach? They had people there who their actions were comparable to the Maisa stone that turned into salt, as we know. And what does it mean that their actions were like that? That they committed adultery. So that's where they were mamzerim there, because they committed adultery. So if they committed adultery, the children would have been mamzerim. Tel Charsha, in other words, that whole area was full of people, so they had to be mamzerim there because they committed adultery. Tel Charsha, what does that mean? Seshakori of Abba. Kid calls his man Abba, my father, daddy. The Ima Mishaskas and his wife, and the mother tells him to be quiet. That's like we call in the Mishnah shtuki. You tell him to quiet down because that's not really his father, because we don't know who his father is, or that the one he identified as his father is not him. Like charash, like deaf or quiet. Below Yochelaget Beisavos, and they couldn't tell who their father was, who their father's family was, Bezarum, or their mother's Imi Yisrael, if they were from the Jewish people. Zui Sufi, that's the Sufi. A Sufi is what we call a foundling. They found him in the street, and they don't know who the mother is or the father. Shtuki is he knows who his mother is, but when he calls somebody Abba or Tata, so the mother says quiet. You got the wrong guy. And a Sufi is, we don't know who it is. Shenesaf Minashuk. Kruv Adon, the Imar. That what does that mean? It says they came up from Babel. Who are they? They came up from Tel Melach and from Tel Charsha. Kruv Adon Biba. What do those words mean? Amar Adon. Baruch said, "Ani amarti you Yisrael lefanai chashuvim kekruv." I said, "Bnei Yisrael would be as important to me as the kruvim, as the cherubs in the base of Mikdash." They made themselves like a leopard, like something gets tummy. They disqualified themselves. Some say Amar Adon. Hashem said, "Afal the master said, even though they made themselves like a leopard." They're important to me. Hashem brings them back. Okay, but the point is that you see over here that many of the adulterous families came up in these places, and therefore they were mamzerim there. Amar Rabba Barachana. If you marry somebody you're not supposed to marry, that's unfit to be married. For example, a man marries somebody who is like a shivcha or a mamzer, somebody that he's not supposed to marry. If you do that, the pasuk considers it ki'ilu charshul chalam kulo, as if he plowed up the whole world with zar melch and planted with salt. In other words, he ruined all the agriculture in the world. Shneimar ve'ela ha'olim mitel melach tel charsha. What does that mean? The ones who came up from the salt and from the plowing. Meaning, if you were married, these people married improperly or they committed adultery, then it's as if they plowed up the world and planted with salt. You marry somebody, meaning you had an improper marriage and you married her only for her money, meaning even though she was improper for you, it doesn't mean somebody who comes from a nice family that just happened to have some money. He marries somebody who's improper for him to marry, unfit, and he marries her because of money. He'll have children who are improper. Hashem Bogdu Kivanim Zarim Yaladu. They rebelled against God because therefore they had strange children. So here, obviously, He says, if he married a mamzer, it's obviously the kids are mamzer. But he means to say probably somebody is just not fit, improper for him to marry, maybe of a lower class of lineage, and married her for the money. That's when you'll wind up with bad children also. Shem and Tamar, Mom and Paul, maybe you'll say, well, at least their money will be saved. Maybe you'll have bad children, but their money will be saved. Talmud Lomer, Ata Yochlem, because now Yochlem, they will be consumed. Chodesh es Chokeim. In a month's time, as we'll see, in a month, the month will destroy all their assets, all their assets. Shematomer Chalka, maybe you'll say only his money, but Chalka not her money. What did she do wrong? She was just trying to improve her status by marrying somebody of a higher class. Lomer Chalkeim, all their money, both his money and her money, will be lost, their assets. Shematomer Lismam Ruba, maybe you'll say, well, it'll take a long time, this time maybe to repair things. Lomer Chodesh, in a month. My mashma, how do you see that? So 1 month comes in, 1 month goes out, and their money's already lost. So it's a bad thing to marry somebody beneath your class. Marry somebody who's improper for you to marry, somebody who's unfit. So Eliyahu Navi binds him with the and Hashem whips him. There's a shiloh over here, he's talking about Eliyahu Navi, the Eliyahu, or another one seems to be a shiloh in Rashi, in the Gerson Rashi we have over here. It's not the Eliyahu in the pasuk. That's what he says, but that's in parentheses. Marshal takes it. Other places have it. Depends on the Gersa which Eliyahu was. But Tana al Kulam Eliyahu Kosei on Kulam, meaning what's Kulam here? Kohanim Levim Yisraelim. If they marry the wrong class, Eliyahu writes it down because Baruch and Hashem signs it. Oilo. Whoa, what does Leo write and Hashem signs? Woe unto him who disqualifies his children, as mishpachto, and blemishes his family, who knows say ishish and the one who marries somebody who's improper. The next few words Eliyahu Baruch Hu wrote, so those are removed because that's what we're talking about already. Kolaposel, whoever says disqualify somebody else. Whoever says this guy is unfit, puzzle. He himself is puzzle. They never talks good. Whenever you see somebody who always talks badly about other people and disqualifies them, he himself, it's a kolaposo b'mumo puzzles, we'll say, a mashmul b'mumo posel. Whoever disqualifies, talks about other people as being a slave or being improper, being that, he's really talking about himself. Person who talks that much. He never talks nicely about other people. We always put that together. We say, if you're accusing somebody else of being stingy, it's probably because you're stingy, or whatever other classification or characteristic you attribute to them, you probably have that yourself. The Gemara is reading now a story relating to that. Hu Gavra. Listen to the story. It's a long story. Hu Gavra the man Ardav. There was a man from Ardav. The Oligavim Pumbedisa went to Pumbedisa. Went to a meat store, a butcher in Pumbedisa. Amrullah, he said, Havali Bishop, give me some meat. I'd like to buy some meat. Amrullah, they told him, Natar ad shakul l'shamay Rav Yehuda bar Yecheskel. Wait till the servant of Yehuda bar Yecheskel comes. He's entitled to get the first cut, and afterwards you'll be able to buy. Wait for a shamas. Then we'll take care of you. You know, we'll attend to you after. The shamas of Rav Yehuda bar Yecheskel, person comes and gets the meat first. Amar, man Yehuda bar Yecheskel, he was upset by this man. So he came, he called him up, Amar, man Yehuda bar Yecheskel, he called him, not Yecheskel, like he made fun of his name. And he said, who's this guy? The Kadamli who's ahead of me, the Shakam K'moy who's entitled to get the first portion of meat. Maybe they just brought in a freshly slaughtered animal, and he was there, and they said, the rabbi gets the first cut. And who is this guy who gets ahead of me? Azlu, they went and they told Rav Yehuda, who was this Rav Yehuda bar Yecheskel, that this man has made fun of you, called you by a different name, and didn't treat you with respect. Shamsa, he put him in Chayrim. Put that man from Nardor in Chayrim. Amru, they told him more, Ruggle the Karyin Shiate. Not only did he make fun of your name and say, who are you to come ahead of him? But rather he also, another thing that he does is he calls people slaves. This guy's a slave, that guy's a slave, right? people. There are people who used to call people mamzer, you know, people who would talk that way. He says he calls everybody a slave. Achar zoleh the avdahu. So Rabbi Yehuda then went, after he heard that's what he did, he went and he announced publicly that this guy's an Eved. Not only did he put him in Cherem, but he said he's an Eved. Azalahu, so this person from Nardah, who was nameless, we just calls him Ahu, right? We just called him person, a government Nardah. He went, Azmei Ladina, so he went and he sued him. He sued him, you know, put him in Cherem and called him a slave. He called him, you know, he sued him in court. The comment of Rav Nachman, before Rav Nachman, maybe Rav Nachman was, I'm not sure if Rav Nachman was Nardah or was Pumbedisa, but he was, he called him in front of the court of Rav Nachman. I see Pitke Dasmana, and it came a subpoena, you know, that he come to court. Also Rav Yehuda, this Rav Yehuda, who had put the other guy in Cherem and called him a slave, and now was given a subpoena to come to court. The commentator, when he went before Rav Huna, who was his Rebbe, Amalei Ezel or Ezel, should I go or not? And what does this guy want from me? I didn't do anything wrong. Amalei Mezel or Boil. You really don't have to go. Yishum the Gavar Rabba, because you are an important man, you're a great rabbi. El Mishum Yaakov Benesiya Kum Zil. But I'll tell you what it is. Rav Nachman, he was called to court in front of Nachman's court. Rav Nachman is the son-in-law of the exilarch of the Kumpel. He says, Rav says, with Rav Nachman, as I said before, wasn't sure if Nachman's taka from Nardo. I knew he thought he was in Nardo. He's Nardo, and you're in Pumbedisa. So you're a great person, and he's a great person. And you're, but he's also Nachman Shmena, and he was the dayan of the Rosh Garusa of the head of the Jews in exile, and he's the son-in-law. He's the son-in-law of the president of the Jews. So you should give him respect. The truth is, it's unworthy for you to go to be brought to court by this commoner who's accusing you of calling him names and putting him in a bad state. You really don't have to go. But out of the cover for Rav Nachman was not only the head in Nardoa, but he was the son-in-law. Because of the honor of Benesi, you should go. Also, okay, so Rav Yehuda went and he found Rav Nachman. He saw him building a fence, like on his roof. Don't you hold the Hadam Rafuna Baridi? Don't you hold of this Rafuna Baridi said on Mishmune Mishmukim Shishmadam Partners Al When a man is appointed to be a leader of a tzibur, as you are, you're the Dayan and you're the son-in-law of the exilarch. Once you're appointed to be a leader, you shouldn't do common labor in front of three people. It's not fitting. It's a busha for the chief rabbi to be doing common work in front of three people. That's improper. So why would you do that? Amalei, because I'm just making a small portion of the balustrade, the defense. I'm just doing a small part. Amalei, what do you call it? Gundrisa? Amalei misanya maka the sibaraisa. The Torah calls it a ma'akeh, right? You see some ma'akeh. There's a mitzvah to make a fence. What's this highfalutin language that you're calling Gundrisa? Well, how are you talking? You know. So Rav Yehuda was giving Rav Nachman a lot of problems. He said it's such a hateful word that the Torah calls it a makkah. The Rabbanan call it a mechitza, and you have to call it a Gundrisa. Amalei Yasamar Akarpita. So Rav Nachman then turned to Rav Yehuda and said, "Have a seat. Sit on the chair." Amalei, how do you call it a karpita? Umisani safsel Rabbanan. You can't use the word a safsel, a bench, or a chair that the rabbis use. Oh, itztaba damin. Sure, people call it an itztaba, also like a pillar or a chair that people sit on. Kind of, again, highfalutin language you're using. Amalei lechamar strongo. Would you like to have a piece of an esrog? Have a bite here. Amalei achem mishmo kala omer strongo tilsa baramas rucha. If you call it an esronga, it's like a fancy way of speaking. You have a third of you of gaiva. You have a third of audacity. How are you talking? Oh, esrog the karabani. Either call it esrog, the rabbis call it. Oh, esroga, damiyinsha. People call it esroga, but not esrunga with a nun in there. Amalishtamar anvaga. Have a drink. A vanga is like a revius of wine or a drink. Have a drink. Amalei, Yisani, Spargus, the Rabbanan call it the drink you take in the morning. It's Revius, it called asparagus. Oh, Anpik, Hinchi. Again, what's with the strange language? I'm like Tasi, Dona Kashkinan. Let my daughter Dona, that was her name, bring us a drink. I'm like Shmuel is what Shmuel said. Isha. You shouldn't use a woman a Jewish woman to serve you. It's improper. All these were complaints that Rav Yehuda lodged against Rav Nachman, who was to be the judge over here. So Rav Nachman answered, well, what do you mean? She's not a woman. She's a Ketana. She's a young girl. She's below 12. So he answered, but you don't use a woman at all as a servant. You don't ask her to serve you. It's improper. So then he said, then Rav Nachman said, I guess they had a long conversation. Rav Nachman said, Rav Yehuda, please give regards to my wife Yalta when you see her. I'm like, Shmuel, you shouldn't talk to a woman at all. First, we talk about that. Here he wasn't even talking about singing. Usually it's called Bisha Erva by singing, or first we say that it's not really improper to talk to a woman. It's improper is if it's done in a sexual tone or a sensual tone, something that could lead to impropriety. Okay, so give a regards to a shliach. So again, Rav Yehuda reported to Rav Nachman, Ein shom b'shom isha aydei bala. You don't even ask a woman's please. You don't give regards even to her husband. I'm like, Ein shom b'shom isha. So he answered that Ein shom b'shom isha. That's what Rav Yehuda said. And Rav Nachman said aydei bala. What about through her husband? How about if I give her regards? Is it okay if I give her your regards? You don't ask a woman, you don't give regards or ask about how she's doing, Bishlama at all. Again, because it could lead to impropriety. Now, apparently his wife had heard all these conversations, this back and forth, how Rav Yehuda kept knocking down whatever Rav Nachman said. So she sent him, settle his case quickly. He's going to turn you into Amaretz because everything you say, he puts down. He's going to make you look like Amaretz. So just settle his case and be done with this guy, Rav Yehuda. He's a troublemaker. Amalei, my shisa tomorrow. What are you doing here, B'chlal? In other words, Rav Yehuda came because he was subpoenaed. Now he showed up, and as soon as he showed up, he said, "What are you doing? You making a fence? Why are you making a fence? You're a chashuv rabbi. Why are you doing this?" Everything that he said, he retorted to him. What are you doing here, B'chlal? Amalei. You sent me a writ inviting me, a subpoena, to come to your court. Abasra, you sent this. You sent this after me. You sent it to me. Amalei, I can't even understand what you're talking about. Whatever I say something, you say use a different language. We don't even talk the same language. I would have sent you a subpoena. I don't even know what you're talking about. Apik doesn't. So he took it out. He took out the subpoena. He had it with him. There's a nusmi bechade from his bosom. He took it out from his pocket. He took out the subpoena. Baslin showed it to him. Amalei, how gavra vadiska. Here I am. I'm the person, and here is the subpoena. Amalei, ho vasamar loch. Okay, I know we don't talk the same way, but as long as you're here already, nishtoi mili. Let's discuss this. At least we should discuss the case that you were subpoenaed for, so people shouldn't say that the rabbis are showing favoritism to one another. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. In other words, we should at least put on the let's have the din. Let's discuss it. I'm like, my time Sham say Marlo Gavra. Why did you put him in Chayr? You put this man. It's a Sir Shlichut Rabbanan. So he was Mitzar. He talked not nicely about rabbis. He said, who is he? And he made fun of his name. So V'nagimar, so put him in Chayrim, or give him Malchus. The Rav Man get al Man the Mitzar Shluch Rabbanan, right? That's what he would do. He would put them either in Chayrim or give them Malchus. He's a Shluch Lefana b'Chayv. He's Chayv Malchus. So he said, so why didn't you give him Malchus? Rav Man get al Man the Mitzar. Why didn't you give him Malchus? So he said, says the other thing I did it even more. I gave him a bigger knas because he was a big mechutzef. Not only that, you said Malchus, I gave him a bigger punishment. I put him in chair. So by the time why'd you call him a slave? Why'd you say he's a slave? I understand. Okay, you put him in chair because he was a mechutzef and he troubled the rabbis. And he said something not nice. He showed disrespect for the rabbis. But why did you call him a slave? I'm relate. To Ruggle the Koyin Shafik, he calls everybody else slaves. That's what we said before. I called him a slave because he was calling everybody else slaves. The Tani call a posel, whoever disqualifies others, he himself is disqualified. Posel. He never talks good about people. But he's talking about his own defect. So Nachman said, when did Shmuel say him? You have to be concerned that maybe he's if a person go around calling somebody else a mamzer, you have to be concerned maybe he himself is a mamzer. You have to be concerned. You have to suspect that maybe he is. Did he say you're allowed to call it out publicly? That doesn't make any sense. He said if somebody call a posel, he may be talking about his own soul, his own blemish or disqualification. But he didn't say you have to cut out publicly. Did he say to announce it publicly? Or either he came in. In other words, don't forget you're not allowed to do a judgment without having both litigants there. We had that also said, right? The judge can't start talking to one litigant without the other one being there. That's also, it looks improper. So the other Badin, who apparently was there, said, Amalei Badina, the Rav Yehuda, you're calling me an Eved? I come from the Hasmonean families. I come from that household. How can you call me a slave? Chashmei Malka, they were kings. Amalei, Achim Shmuel says, oh yeah? This is what Shmuel said, called Omar. The base Chashmei, because whoever says I come from Chashmei, it's really a slave, as we're going to enumerate. Whoever says, that's what Shmuel said. Amalei, don't you hold what Rav said? Rav said, if a person quotes a halacha, Tam Chacham quotes a halacha from his rabbis, and he's repeating halacha, Imkota Maisa Amra, if he said it before the was necessary to paskin based on that, before Maisa happened, Shamlo, we listened to him. Imlav Ein Shamlo. So over here, you're just using that excuse now that whoever comes with Rosh Hashanah, you didn't say that before, you're saying it now. Now that we're accusing you. Why did you call me an Eved? You said, well, because of this that Rav said that Rav Abba said the name of Rav, name of Huda, name of Rav, that anybody who says that he's Beis Shemai is a slave. We didn't know that you said that before. You can't quote. You can't bring up a new psak now after you've already in the case. Well, like you'd ask Rav Nasna, who's now in Nardo, who just came, and he knows the same thing. He hadn't been Rav Nasna, had not visited Nardo for 13 years. So he had to come that day, and I guess they knew he was there. It was probably in the papers that he was there that day. Amalei, so he called him in and he said, Amalei, so Rav Yehuda said to Rav Nasna, Dachir Mar Mai Amar Shmuel. Do you remember what Shmuel said? Kikoi Chadkar Aguda, when he was standing with one foot on the bank of the river. Chadkar, remember, one on the bridge or on the ferry. Do you remember what he said? Shmuel says yes. But Masa said, I know what Shmuel said. Called Omer the base Malka Kasina. Whoever says I come from the house of the Chashmonean kings, Abdu is a slave. Why? How do we have a slave? Famous. The only survivor of I guess Hortus was killed everybody. And whoever survived the only survivor was this one young Jewish girl from the Salka Legra. She didn't want to be defiled, so she went up on the roof. Rami called out the and she said, "Call them Beis Hashmonaim. Whoever says that he's from the Beis Hashmonaim, Abdu, he's an Eved, because I'm the last one and I'm dying now." Nothing because she fell off. She threw herself down from the roof. Mason, she died. So therefore, we have proof that you're an Eved, because not only do you call other people avodim and you fit into the category of call it posel b'mumo posel, which is a suspicion at least. It's not a reason maybe to announce it publicly, but you're suspected of being an Eved. More than that, you say you come from the Beis Hashmonaim. Anybody who came from Beis Hashmonaim today must be a slave because everybody else was killed. The whole household was killed. So they actually now Rav Nachman Pasket again, like Rav Yehuda, they called out that he was a slave. Ahu Yuma that day, many ksubas in Nardo, ksubas Isha were torn up because it turned out there were other people also who claimed to be either this guy's family, maybe it was this guy's family because he came from Nardo, and there were many other family members, and it turns out that they were all claimed to be from Beis Hashmonaim. They were slaves. So ksubas that they had written were torn up, meaning their marriage was not a valid marriage. So they were all torn up that day. Kika Nafik Abasrei. Now when Rav Yehuda left when he came out from the court, I guess maybe he's going back to Pumbedisa, and the court case took place in Ardor. Nafik Abasrei, they wanted to stone him because he had basically disqualified many Jewish families in Ardor as being slaves. They weren't really Jews. So they wanted to stone him. Amarli said, Isha Seeker, listen, you be quiet. If you want to be quiet, keep your mouth shut. Elo, if not, Magdalena Alaihu, I will reveal about you, I will tell about you. Adam said, there are two families in Ardor. One is called from the house of Yonah. One is called from the house of Urbasi, which is like a raven, right? And raven is an impure bird, non-kosher simonech. Tame, tar, right? The kosher bird is what the kosher Jews are called, and the non-kosher bird is what the non-kosher Jews are. So either leave me alone, or I'm going to publicize about more of your family members there or other people in our dog who could be coming. So they took all the stones that they were about to stone Rav Yehuda with. Maybe that proved that they were slaves; they weren't real Jews. They took all the stones. They threw them down in the river, and the river, the Nahar Malka, it's called the Royal River, was stuffed up from the rivers, and the water didn't flow anymore. They threw it. There were so many rocks there. Maybe that's also an exaggeration. Machros Rav Yehuda Pumbedisa. Rav Yehuda called out in Pumbedisa, or he says Minardah. Besides, it's Benardah. Ada V'Yonasan Api. Those families or those names of those people are slaves. Yehuda Bar Papa is a mamzer. He's a mamzer. Vati Bar Tubia V'Ramas Rucha Lo Shakul Gita de Chalusa. He's really a slave, but in his gaiva, right? In his gaiva, he's such a bal gaiva. He's so full of himself that he won't accept a get of chayr, another chayr. So in other words, he's really an evid, so he should be free, but he won't even accept a writ of freedom. He won't accept it because he's not a slave. But he really needs he's so arrogant that he wouldn't accept a get, because that would confirm that he's a slave, so he wouldn't accept it. Pardon? From whom? Presumably, maybe they named also slave, and he belongs to whoever. Yeah, well, maybe not. We don't know what the name of the story. Maybe Bezin would have given him a get on behalf of whoever the master was. Not clear. Machaz Rabbi Mechuzah called out that Belai, Denai, Talai, Malai is a guy, so he disqualified them all. These are either the names of families or the names of places. Maybe these were little neighborhoods. These people are all disqualified Jews. The people from Guvai, they're really because they're Givonim, so that's why they're called Guvai, because they're really from Givon. They're not proper Jews. Nisa is the Rai Nisanoi is a village. The Rai is a village of Nisim, also improper Jews. They're like Givonim and Nisim are not allowed to marry the Jewish people. Only Mamzer they can marry. Omar Biel said, High Park of Beikubi, the Pumbedisa, this area in Pumbedisa called Beikubi, Kumdav, they're all slaves. I'm going to Bishmul. Rav Meir Shapiro, either 400 slaves, 4,000 slaves, and Imor. He had either Pashur ben Imer had either 400 or 4,000 slaves. They all mixed in with Kahuna families, right? If you see that a Kohen is a big chutzpah, right? There's a big chutzpah, they're very arrogant. Not just arrogant, they're impudent. They're very, very chutzpah. Eino Elomehem must be from them. In other words, all his slaves intermarried with Kohanim. So when you see a Kohen who's got a lot of chutzpah, you can assume that he has got some slave blood in him. Amar Bai Kulu Yaspan the Shura the Radah, or the Gear says they all live either in Syria and Nardah, either the wall of Nardah or Syria and Nardah. Pleaded Rav Lazar. This disagrees with Lazar. And Rav Lazar, Misa Kohen Basmitz. If you see a Kohen is very impudent, very chutzpah, don't be concerned that something's wrong with his lineage. Shemer ba'amech k'mivei Kohen. Your nation is like the ones who argue by Kohanim. In other words, Kohanim themselves also argue. So he disagrees. As the first opinion was that that the reason if you find Kohanim who are very chutzpahdik, it's because they have slave blood in them. Rav Elazar says no, that's the natural tendency of many Kohanim to be a chutzpahdik. Amar Rav Avin Barav Ad Amarav. Don't listen if you marry somebody, it's improper for you to marry. When Hashem rests his countenance on the Jewish people, made al kol shvatim, Hashem gives testimony that all these tribes are pure lineage. It doesn't testify about him because he didn't marry. His family is not of pure lineage. Shnemar shiftei ka edus Yisrael. Pasuk in Tehillim that Hashem gives testimony to Yisrael about the tribes of Israel. Emasai of Enosis. When does he give testimony? When they are proper tribes of Israel with pure lineage. Amar Chama Baruch Tanina. Yeah, when he rests his countenance on the Jewish people, he only rests it on the families who are what we call, blue bloods, of pure, they have pure descent, of pure lineage. Shenamar ba'esahi nu'um Hashem. At that time, says Hashem, I will be for a God for the family of Israel. It doesn't say for all of Israel. For the certain families. And they will be for me for a nation. In other words, he's only going to give testimony and he's only going to rest his countenance on the families who are purebreds. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna. Zumal Yisrael Yesh ben Yisrael Geir. Says this is the difference between Yisrael and Geir. I will be a God for them. Meaning, even if they're not such tzaddikim, I will first be a friend for God, and I will bring them closer to me. Rashi says from the bottom of the wide lines, even though they're not so close to me, they're not so loyal to me, but I will bring them close because they are purebreds. But by Gerim, it doesn't say that. Back in the Gemara, it says it says me who's there, who is so bold with his heart, lie to approach and be near me. In other words, if they come close to Hashem, that they voluntarily push themselves into the Jewish people, then Hashem will accept them. But by the purebred Yisraelim, the purebred Jews or the good mishpachos, even if they're not so loyal, Hashem will make himself close to them and he'll bring them closer. So, but by the Geras, it's Mizeh Orav as Libo, who is the one who is bold, like I say, La'yom Hashem, V'yisim Lilam, they will come close to me, and then I will be close to them. I will be a God for them. But by the Jews, Hashem says, I will be a God for them first, and then I will bring them close. This depends on the time. Many times when there were a lot of Gerim, and they still had their old minhagim of the Goyim, Gerim who maybe who had worshipped the Avodah Zarah, so they are difficult to Yisrael because sapach is like a scab. Shnemar, and the ger will be loaned to you or will join you, right? They will join you, not loan. They will join the gerim will join these people. The nisbachu al beis Yaakov, and they will be like a scab to beis Yaakov. Let's say it's a sapachas. How do we know this sapachas is like a scab? So in the rule of Mitzorah, it says if you have on the skin, if you have a rising, let's say, so sapachas or a scab, that's also one of the signs of tumah of Mitzorah. Amar of Chama Bar Chanina. Baruch Hu Mitayr, we're at the top of Vayin now. When he purifies the shvatim, in other words, when he decides, sees who's a kosher Jew, who's a mamzer, who's not, etc. Shifto Shalevi Mitar Tchila. He's first going to purify the tribe of Levi to see who's really kosher among them. Shneimar the Yoshav, and he will sit Mitzaref Mitayr. He will be a refiner and a purifier of kesef. And just like you refine and purify silver to be pure, and you will sit there and Hashem will do the same thing with the Levium. Batir es b'nei Levi, he will purify them. The zikak osam, and he will purge them of any impurities. Kezav kesef, like you do with silver and gold. So v'hayu Hashem, and they will be for God. The pasuk goes on. Magishe mincha b'tzedakah. That's all part of the pasuk. They will be Hashem those who offer. They will be to Hashem like those who offer a carbon mincha. It's stuck in righteousness. So the first opinion here, so to speak, like what Ezra did, he finally checked into all the ichas of all the various classes, and he made these are Mamzerim, these are Nasinim, these are Gevonim, these are Leviim, these are Yisrael, separated all the ones who were impure and brought them up there to Israel to keep Babel pure, as we discussed on yesterday's Daf, that Babel was considered the purest of the Jews in Babel were the purest because Ezra had removed from them all the impurities, brought them with him to Eretz Yisrael. So it sounds like that he actually separated them out, and those who were Mamzerim, we know are Mamzerim. But Shimon Levi learns it differently. Amr Shimon Levi, Kesef Matar Mamzerim. Money was Matar Mamzerim. What do I mean by that? There were many people who weren't proper Jews or Goyim, whoever they were. They paid money, they donated a lot of money so that they would be accepted among the Jewish people. And as time passed, the fact there were Mamzerim was lost. We didn't know who's whom. So the Keshenemar, the Yoshem Matzar Matar, Hashem will sit and be the refined or the purified Kesef. That's it. In other words, Hashem's going to mix it. We're going to see Rashi in a minute to finish this off. My Magisha Mincha, it's like, what does it mean? They will give carbon mincha in righteousness. It's like Sakos HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem did righteousness in Yisrael. Shemeshpacha Shenitma Nitma, a family that was mixed up. This Nitma is not this is Nitma with an I, and right? This is not we're purified. This was mixed up. Once the family got mixed up over a period of many generations, we don't know who's whom. Hashem left them in the Jewish people and did not remove them. This is different. So here, take a look at Rashi in the narrow lines. Rashi says, Rabbi Yeshua, in the third of the narrow lines in Rashi, I'm the type of lav mavdil. So not that Hashem purified, let's say, the Levium or the other Jewish people by separating out the ones who were impure. El matar machshirim kulam, but rather he was matar all of them. So lost love that we say that the mamzerim will become tahorim because Hashem will purify them. Hashem has His way of purifying them. Not that He had to remove the bad one, but they will include them in different ways to understand what the Torah is. All right, we'll pick it up from the two tomorrow. Have a good day. Shavua Tov. Stay safe. Good news to everybody.